Welcome back to another episode of Tag Talk, where we talk about everything event planning. My name is Meaghan, and I work on the marketing team at PC Name Tag. And today I am here with Christy Renee Stehle. Thanks so much for joining me.
Hey, thank you. It's good to be here.
Awesome. Christy is an amazing speaker. She's a leadership trainer, an author, and a storyteller. So we'll be talking a lot about brand storytelling today. One of my favorite things to do on Tag Talk is speaker highlights, because I feel like everyone has a really unique story around their passions and their expertise and their offerings. So, Christy, I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about you and what you do.
Absolutely. So I like to say that my creative superpower is storytelling. And so that's manifested in a lot of ways throughout my life. I got my start in hospitality design and storytelling in that way. More recently, I was in corporate advertising, really deep in the trenches of that for a while. So I like to say I got a great education in all things brand storytelling while there. And then now I am really excited about the work that I'm doing, because while I was in corporate advertising, I started to see that there's a trend going on, and the world that we know it, the business landscape as we know it, is changing dramatically. And so now what I help people do is understand how to use storytelling tactics, advanced storytelling tactics, and then their own authentic story to stand out from the crowd and rise above the noise. And I'm sure we'll get really deep into that in a few questions. But in a nutshell, I like to define myself as a storyteller because of all the different labels we can put on ourselves, creative director, marketing strategist, or whatever it may be. I find that when we answer from a place that's like, if we took all of the labels away, who are we at our core? And to me, storyteller fits that. And I've had a big journey through identity. It's part of what I teach in the work that I do now. So I love to answer that with something that rings true in my heart without just like the fancy labels and titles of what we do for work.
I love the concept of storytelling. So, whether you're a business professional or an event planner, that's something that Christy and I have in common. We both work within the events industry. Storytelling is huge. You want to keep your attendees' attention. You want to keep your customers' attention. So I love that we'll be diving deeper into that today. So another thing that I love asking speakers is the story of how they became speakers. Could you tell me more about what sparked your passion for speaking?
Oh, yeah, that's a great story. Most people would not believe that public speaking used to be my biggest fear in the world. And so to give a little bit of a backstory, in 2015, I was suffering, 2014, 2015, I was suffering from gut issues so debilitating. I did not know that the gut problems were the root of everything. I just knew that my body was shutting down. My hair was falling out. I had this horrible acne that was erupting all over my faces. Doctors weren't being able to give me any help. This was a time when gluten-free was not an option anywhere. It meant like one little dusty package of Mary's Gone crackers at a specialty store in the bottom left, Nobody knew about these things. And so they're like, just, go on elimination diets. And after the course of a couple years, I got to the point where I was eating rice, steamed carrots, and red bell peppers as the only thing I could eat without my belly just ballooning up. And a couple weeks later, I remember sitting on my floor in Jacksonville, Florida, my back pressed against the couch. And I remember looking down. I was like, that doesn't look right. That doesn't feel right. And I found a huge lump in my right breast.
Oh,
and now I
no.
had, just to make matters worse, aged out of my parents' health insurance. I had just turned 27 and lost health insurance. And that moment changed my life. Because, I remember being really scared. But I was like, I have two choices. I could be paralyzed in fear, or I could dive headfirst into self-healing. So I sat on Google and the back pages and did research after research after research. And pretty soon, that's when I learned that my gut biome had been damaged. I could go on a soapbox and talk about this for hours. So I'll try and give the short story. I know a lot of people are curious about this, though. So if you are and you're listening, this is something I can talk about at length. Short of it is, I restored my gut biome. I ended up having the breast lump removed without it being cancer. I think that was my first journey with the power of the mind. And there's a longer, great story there as well. But what triggered my love for public speaking actually came from that moment, because in that time, I was like, you know what? Health is our greatest wealth, and I feel better than I've ever felt in my entire life. I can eat food again. I like to describe it. I can remember when serotonin rushed back into my life because everything that was dark and gray, like, was suddenly full of color. I imagine it's like when TV went into Technicolor. It was just like, so I packed everything up. I put tenants in my 4-bedroom home. I had a one-way ticket abroad, and I lived overseas for the next 5 years. Nobody could stop me. And while I was over there, I started with my childhood boyfriend. We split up while we were over there. It was very amicable. High five. See you never. It's time to go our separate ways. And that letting go of my safety net in that way, that sparked something big in me. And so the next day I went to a storytelling workshop in a park just to get out of the shared Airbnb we were still in. And I remember being partnered up with somebody, told to tell a story. And now at this point in my life, I was still so terrified that sharing my story just with one person in a park, like with him holding an iPhone, would have terrified me. But I had this story ready for the taking, right? I just had 14 years with this person. Like, okay, I can tell him about that. And when I got done, his reaction was so emphatic. He was volunteering me. You got to pick her. You got to pick her. She's going to tell her story. She's got to tell her story. I was like, absolutely not. I am not standing up in front of this group of 40 people and sharing my story. You must be crazy. I don't know who you are. Thank you. Leave me alone. No way. I ended up having peer pressure. Go, go, go. And I stood up on this little park bench. And I remember telling myself as the blood's rushing in my ears and my heart is pounding, I'm like, it's okay. Just tell your story. The sooner you're done, the sooner you can run away and hide. I'm up there, and my worst fear happens. They're laughing at me.
Oh, no.
A few minutes go by, and I see some people gasp collectively. A few more minutes go by, and I see people crying. Tears are leaking down their face, and I realize they weren't laughing at me. They were laughing with me. They were crying with me. They were with me. And so I remember looking out into that crowd, and the air is unlike any I had ever felt. I can feel the tether of connection between us. They laugh, they cry. I remember feeling like an artist who found her canvas for the first time. And I got down, and I was at Mind Valley University. If those listening know what that is, it's a personal professional development platform. It's kind of touchy-feely. So everybody pulls me into a big group hug. And I remember thinking, this is the big thing I've been so scared about. And then I went to a cacao ceremony the next night, and they're, doing the drums, and they're like, make the craziest declaration you can. 1 year from today, where will you be? And I'm thinking, well, speaking was pretty cool. That was kind of fun. That was scary and exhilarating, and we were connected. I got this big hug after it. I feel really good. Like, I'm going to be on that Mind Valley stage. That's what I'm going to manifest. And the story goes on, and there's a lot of really great, exciting things in there. But to not take too much of the audience's time today, I could go that is a big part of keynotes that I give because it is wonderful. 2 weeks before I was scheduled to go to Mind Valley University 2019 in Pula, Croatia as an attendee. That was the one I had set my sights on, thinking I need to be a 6-figure coach. I need to do this. I need to do everything. I remember being at my parents' house in between living in Bali and going to Croatia. I'm doing yoga on their back deck. And I just kind of collapsed. Like, if all I want to be is a storyteller, if all I want to do is share my story from stage, why am I killing myself doing all this other stuff that I hate, that doesn't fit? Why am I doing that? And it was in this moment of surrender that I could feel. And that's why I answered you from a place of not putting labels on myself. Because I felt all the labels of be important and this person and that person and all of these masks of identity and high achieving and, who I think I need to be fall off. And I remember thinking, what if I just show up as a storyteller? What if I go as a nobody? I'm not this big, I didn't make my dream happen 1 year. That's okay. What if I just show up as me? I kid you not, Meaghan, 12 hours later, I opened up my inbox, and it said, "Dear Christy Renee, we would please confirm that you have a ticket to Mind Valley University. We would like to have you on our main stage with your workshop." I was like,
that's huge.
Amazing. Amazing. So the story is almost done. Keeps going and going. I decided to speak on courage because, as you can tell, it took a lot to get there, right? 2 days before my talk, I'm invited to face my actual worst fear. I thought it was public speaking.
But wait.
But wait, there's more. I was invited to go cliff jumping.
Oh
It's like,
my goodness.
no. I've been terrified of heights my entire life. There's no way, no how I'm getting up on a cliff and jumping off of it. My body will not do it. I remember being like, what am I supposed to do? Tell them no, but hey, make sure you check out my talk on courage because it'll be great. So my love for public speaking came by the way of courage, came by the way of surrender, came by the way of sharing a part of me that I thought that I would keep hidden forever, a part that I could never do. And when I got up on that stage after cliff jumping, because yes, I did it.
Oh, good for you.
So unstoppable because I faced the biggest thing I thought I could never do, that I got up on that stage and I delivered the most magnetic performance of my life, pulled people in, had them hooked on the edge of their seat, plugged into every word. And then I had 40 people join me to face their fear of public speaking on stage. And one went on to become an award-winning public speaker, all because of courage of something I thought I could never do.
That's amazing. I love that you faced your fears because I know I identify more as an introvert. And, this is something that's been really pushing me to get out of my comfort zone. So one thing that you kind of brought up in your story that you just told is that, everyone has a story. And I think that's something that I've been trying to learn a little bit more about this year is, when I get on LinkedIn, I'm like, would people find what I have to say interesting on LinkedIn? But like you said, everyone has a story. It might not seem interesting to you, but I can guarantee you it's interesting to someone. So that's a great segue into my next question that I have for you. You recently made a LinkedIn post that I thought was really interesting. And you said, learning to be a captivating storyteller is the best skill that you can learn in 2024. And you also wrote within the post, every person, every organization, every event has a unique story that will transform others. So I thought we could talk a little bit more about brand storytelling today. Could you tell me a little bit more about what brand storytelling is to you?
Yes, and I'm so glad that you brought that up for my last story. Yes, everybody does have a story to tell, and I guarantee you most people are sitting there thinking that they don't have a story to tell, that's not good enough, they haven't done it, who cares, why would somebody listen? Trust me, I've been there. I was the most hidden, the most shy, the most, don't look at me, I don't have a story, I don't have a voice, little segue. My favorite movie growing up was The Little Mermaid. I watched it, now I'm dating myself, on VHS over and over and over and over again. And I grew up thinking like, it's so interesting which came first, chicken and the egg. I watched this Disney story of the princess who gives away her voice and then learns it's the most valuable thing. And then I went through a life and I kind of did the same. I gave away my voice, I gave away my power. But once I reclaimed that, all my power was within me. And that's, I think that a lot of people listening may be thinking, well, brand storytelling, that doesn't really have anything to do with me. I'm not a company. I'm not an organization. I'm not an influencer. And if you're thinking that, I'm here to tell you, I'm sorry, but you're wrong. In 2024, brand storytelling is so important from everybody. From if you're an individual just seeking a job or you have a job, let's talk about how disrupted and ever evolving this world is. We don't know what industry is going to be disrupted next. The reason I'm not in corporate advertising right now, which is a blessing because I was supposed to jump full feet into this message and work that I'm doing now, but that industry was disrupted. And when I graduated from college with guaranteed job placement, I was in hospitality, design, and events. I went from 100% job placement. Within 6 months, nobody could find an unpaid internship. So the world continues to be disrupted. And when you connect to your story, your uniqueness, that's the only thing that no one else has, right? Everybody we're talking about, and I think it was in that post I may have mentioned, we need, in this new era of business, we need to shift the focus from skills that can be automated or researched in a day and start talking about what's unique to humans. What do we have? And it's that story. And so it doesn't matter what journey you've been on. And a lot of times people in their story want to shy away from their failures. but nothing connects to people faster. And if we're talking about brand storytelling, the point of that is to engage, right? Whether you're wanting to plan an event or you're talking about your brand, your event, yourself online. If you can have a strong message that you come back to, if you can have something that engage and connects and resonates, that's what's going to set you apart. And nothing does that faster than stories of triumph, of vulnerable stories where you had courage, you learned a lesson. It shows that you're human, you've been through something, you've been on a journey. And that's what people connect with. And that's what most people often shy away from. So I would definitely encourage with brand storytelling, when you get really clear on your authentic message inside, what have you lived, what makes you you, that's where everything else can be built up around that. And trust me, I have sold my story with hardly anything else again and again in this disrupted world. And it's the thing that continuously has helped me rise above.
I think that's a really great tip that you can take to social media, specifically LinkedIn. You don't have to always talk about your successes and all the great things that you've done within your job. Sometimes it's great to be vulnerable and talk about some of those things that you've struggled with and maybe what you learned from those things. So that's a great inspiration for when you're trying to write some LinkedIn posts. And that kind of ties in with your personal brand too. That's something I've been trying to do more of this year, is get onto LinkedIn and kind of show more about who I am, what I do. I write for PC Name Tag's blog. It's called the Tag Talk blog. So that's kind of helped me integrate into the event planning community and get to know people. And I've even been to PC Name Tag trade shows that I've been to with our booth, and people will come up and they'll say, "Hey, I recognize you from your newsletters," or "I recognize you from the blog that you write." So you may not think that you need a personal brand or a storytelling strategy, but it's really worked for me. And I definitely think that it can work for you too.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing, right? The job market's oversaturated, social media is oversaturated, business events, everything is oversaturated right now. And what people remember is how you make them feel. And words are such a powerful way to do that. So I love that that's working for you. That is exactly so much of what I teach, how you can be strategic in the stories that you're telling to stand out and rise above the noise. And case in point, yes, people, and that's why I call it magnetic communication, because people are coming up to you. Your next great opportunity, your next great connection is like, "Oh, hey, how awesome, you're here. Let's do this." That's kind of how this conversation even started here today.
Speaking of connections, that's a great segue into our next question that we have. So whether you're a business professional or an event planner, you're always kind of looking for new and innovative ways to increase engagement, whether it's with your customers or your event attendees. So I am interested to hear, if someone were to ask you for your best tips for capturing your audience's attention, what tips would you share with them?
Yes, capturing attention. Okay, so people tend to make this one mistake all the time. So you're getting the good juicy stuff here. That's a very good question, Meaghan. The audience is about to get the good stuff. The number one mistake I see most people make, whether you're at networking events, whether you're online creating content, whether you're sending cold outreach, the number one mistake people are making is pitching too quickly. They come straight in the gate. Hey, if we're networking, it's like, "Hey, we're at a networking event. We're here to grow business. We're here to talk business. We should talk business," right? Wrong. Everyone's talking business. But if you can create a shared moment of understanding with somebody, then you're connected. Then you've pulled them in. From there, you get more time to share your story. I gave a training in June where I talked about a moment at WEC. On day 2, lunch was in a different hall than day 1, and I was running late, expecting things to be just like day 1. And so I opened this door, and I was shocked to see all 2,500 attendees packed in there, sitting at full tables, laughing, joking, being with all their industry friends. And going into WEC, I knew exactly 2 people. I was pushing myself out of my typical industry to get new opportunities. I was like really intimidated when I walked in, like, "Oh geez." And my mind starts chattering, and, all of that little voice that can kind of hijack our behavior at times was kicking in. And I used to allow that to take my behavior and change it. But now I know that that's a signal to drop into the present moment. So I slowed my roll. I started walking more slowly. I was like, okay, voice, we're going to make you go away. I started connecting to my breath more deeply. I said a little mantra in my head, like, I don't remember what it is at this time, a positive little mantra, you know, the right people are going to be attracted to me, something like that. And as I was saying that in my head, a woman's path crosses mine. Now she takes one look at the big room and she knows everybody in there, but she's like, oh, I got to be somewhere at 2. It's not worth my time to try and find my friends, want to just grab a seat together. Now I knew that the people that had somewhere to be at 2, they were a big deal. So in this training, I kind of set the room up, right? I was like, okay, before I told maybe that entire, I think I told that story and then I sat down and I was like, who here thinks as soon as we sat down, I took that opportunity to, you know, pitch her. Every single hand went up, every single one. Yeah. I was like, who would believe that we sat in silence for 15 minutes? Like, haha, she would never. We sat in silence for 15 minutes. Because of that little work I had done to drop into the present moment, I was able to clearly see that the woman sitting next to me was distracted. She wasn't present. We've both been running around event for 2 days. And when we sat down next to somebody we didn't know with a plate of food and not a lot of time, I could have made the mistake of chattering at her and pitching, but I didn't. And as we went through our meal, we started laughing at the shared experience of trying to cut our chicken off the bone with plastic cutlery. And we're like, you know, not wanting to fling it across the table and into somebody's face. And so as we're laughing, that's what triggered her to look over at my name tag and ask more. Then instead of pitching her, I went vulnerable. I told her the truth. I said, you know, I'm here looking for new opportunities. I've pushed myself out of my industry, out of my comfort zone. I was in corporate advertising. This is the second industry in my life to, you know, just the rug gets pulled out from under us. You know, we get into a conversation. And before I know it, she's pulling out her business card and she's telling me, you know, I choose the speakers for our event, our big annual conference in Texas. And you'd still have to go through judging, but she said, our community needs to hear your message. Now, I didn't pitch her at all. How do you think the conversation would have gone if I sat down and was like, hey, I'm a speaker and I train on this and that and the other. Okay, let me eat my food. I'm exhausted. I've got 10 billion things on my mind. But instead, I had this new connection. And now whether or not I end up on that stage, that would be amazing. But there's value even in the connections without getting that far. She told me a whole community of people I had never considered need to hear my message. How valuable is that? And that came from connection. That came from being present and understanding to how engage. So that's the first mistake. Even if it feels wrong to sit in silence, sometimes that can be the right move. Do not pitch too quickly. Everybody is so sick of being sold to. I would say that's the first tip that I would give. And then the second would be thinking that the tactics that used to work still do, right? So 2026 marks the official era of what's being termed the new era of business. And while it's already, you should have been planning for it 2 years ago if you didn't want to be behind and you're an organization and things take a lot of time to move a big ship. But we're entering into an era where everybody that's a decision maker, even in the B2B, business to business space, is a digital native. So all of the tactics that used to work when, 10 years ago in 2015, and you could post not saying that you can't post a blog, not to say that is still a huge part of being strategic. But a lot of people think like, I'm just going to show up, I'm going to post something and people are going to read it. And that's an assumption that you can't make anymore. It's not enough just to show up. Or I'm talking to family enterprise businesses who at 2024 in this day and age are like, I want to break into social media. Okay, let's pull back a little bit. Let's talk about some other strategies that can maybe be a lot more helpful and valuable in the long run that aren't just finally jumping on this train and posting on social media, because so many things fall on deaf ears. And actually, if you get into it, I've pulled some data from some studies showing that while more people are online than ever before, engagement is way, way down. So with this new era, with these new demographics, we have to have innovative strategies to pull people in, to engage, because it's not a given. It's not a given. It's harder than ever, but that just means there's opportunity for innovation. And I see that as a great thing, because it's a return to the classic element of storytelling, because stories engage, stories pull people in. And then it's just about, from there, I have this thing I call a 1-sentence story. When we can develop your 1-sentence story, that is something so potent that makes people feel, that pulls them in, well, that's what gives you the opportunity to then do your blogs and your podcasts. And then once that story's out there, you have them hooked, well, then you have a longer opportunity to pull people in and bring them in and make them love you.
I love that. I think storytelling is one of those timeless things. Everyone loves to hear a story. So it's kind of just trying to figure out what mediums work well for your audience, whether it's video or podcasts or blogs or, LinkedIn posts. So it's all about kind of testing to see what keeps people interested and engaged. But you can always return to storytelling, because that's something that will always keep people interested, whether it's in your brand, your personal brand, your event. Great thing to return to. One thing that Christy and I have in common is the events industry. So I wanted to ask you, as a speaker and a storyteller, what is your best advice for event professionals?
Yes. Well, I think we've touched on it a little bit today, but I think I would really want to hammer home the point that it is time to be very innovative with your strategy. And if you're just going through autopilot and getting the same marketing tactics and same marketing consultants and just the same old, you're not going to rise above the noise. And so I've been seeing a trend in the event space where, after 2020, we were so excited to be in person again. And then it's kind of swung the pendulums on the other end. And I'm finding they're tired, they're not as engaged, they're not having as much fun at these events. They're like, oh, it's just this and that, and it's just so much. And so to keep them engaged, to keep them want to coming back, to make sure that they're getting the connection and that the value on all of the time and money and everything that goes into these events is worthwhile, is to return back to the beginning and say, okay, what do our attendees really want? They want an experience. They want to be connected. They want to feel. And so we were talking about storytelling, in this whole time we've been talking about storytelling, but I'd like to take that a step further and say, to really engage audiences right now, it's not just enough to tell a story, but it's how you tell that story. And so there's advanced storytelling techniques like dynamic range and tonal inflection and the power of the pause. So there's a lot that you can do, from getting a keynote speaker who is a great storyteller, who is a great connector, somebody who's telling things about, we were talking about how your triumphs aren't just the thing to highlight, but what makes a keynote speaker, what makes a great speaker and separates them from the good speakers are the ones that know how to tap into their past pain and bring that forth and stand in their power. They say, this is something that I have felt, and this is how I overcame that. And so they're guiding the audience with their emotions. Like I was talking about earlier, after I faced my biggest fear and I jumped off that dang cliff thinking I could never do it, my words, my confidence, my energy were so transformative, because I got to tell a story of something really huge from stage. Got to say, I was sitting in your seats 1 year ago, too terrified to hold a microphone in my hand and say my name. And now I am delivering a keynote speech and transforming you guys. And that all came down to feeling, emotion. And so if you understand how to evoke emotion, whether it's on LinkedIn, at networking, even it's possible to do over cold DMs. I've had 2 of my biggest career wins to date come from me sending cold LinkedIn DMs and having an amazing connection form from that. So it's possible in any medium, but the biggest advice I would say is to not have your audiences swing to I don't want to be here anymore. This is too big, too much. I'm losing connection. Return to what matters. Return to getting them to feel, and then everything will fall into place from there. And that goes for your MCs, your keynote speakers, the event story and narrative that you're designing. How can you design something from pre to post event that kind of takes on a life of its own? It's magnetic in itself, and that it's pulling people in. People are talking about it and sharing it. And so you're not worrying as much about, oh, is this as good as last year? And we have these budgets and our budget isn't nearly enough to get done what we've had to be done in the past. That's what I keep hearing. But if you can enrich it from the beginning with emotion, connection, story, it's going to go way further than it ever has.
Keynote speakers are so important because they really set the tone for your event. So it's great to, try something new. That's one thing that I've kind of had come up with the event planners that I speak with is sometimes we're, as event planners, afraid to try something new. But as you kind of talked about, attendees want something new. They want something different. They want something exciting. So it's good to challenge yourself to think outside the box and try new things and hire new keynote speakers like Christy. So
Yeah.
Christy is available as a speaker, an MC, a trainer, lots of amazing resources that she offers. I can link to her website if anyone wants to check it out. Could you tell me about who your ideal client is and how you can help them?
Yes, absolutely. So I would say from, you just listed a lot of different ways I can help, right? From people sitting in the audiences to event planners that want to hire me, to organizations that need help writing something above the noise, to individuals who, you were saying like yourself, may be feeling, I don't have a story to tell. I don't know what to post. Nobody wants to hear from me. All of those people share something in common. And the people that I can help the most are the ones that are ready for more. The ones that know that there's something inside of them, they know that they're good, but they want to be great. And so for individuals that I work with and people that I coach, they're like, I had a woman come up to me. This is the power of, again, magnetic communication. I gave a 30-second pitch in April, and the storyteller, always with the stories. I gave a 30-second pitch in April. We'll leave it at that. And nearly 5 months later, with almost no communication, a woman messaged me out of the blue and said, Christy, I've been thinking about that pitch that you gave in April this whole time. I want to work with you. I know I'm good, but I saw you get up and I saw how you commanded an audience and I saw every single person zone in and plug into you. And I want to learn that. I want to be the go-to voice in my industry. I want to learn how to do that. And so I think whether you're working with me as a coach or I'm doing brand consulting or helping you plan an event that pulls people in and has them thinking about you 5 months later from something as small as 30 seconds, like that is the power that this message has, that magnetic presence and communication and storytelling. And so if you're listening and you're like, yeah, I'm good, but man, I want to take it to the next level. I want to be great. I want to engage people. I want people to be talking about that for months. I'm your woman.
Amazing. How can I find you? Where are you on social media and how can I find your website?
Yes, my website is christyrenee.com. There is a tab for connect. So you can go ahead and get there and find me on LinkedIn and all the socials. That way, I will say that I am far more active on LinkedIn. I love it in that is the only social media platform where people actually go to foster connections and build business. Whereas Instagram, me personally at this point, when I was traveling, I did the whole influencer thing before influencer was a word. And I got, up to 25,000 followers or something like that. And it was really fun. And I got to post a static picture of me in a travel destination with a quote and a little story. And like, that's what Instagram was 10 years ago. And I loved that. But now it moves so quickly. I truthfully love to get on there for stand-up comedy and recipes. So if you find me on Instagram, send me those. We'll be fast friends. But if you want to network, if you want to talk business, if you want to see more about my services, you can find all of that on LinkedIn, which Meaghan, you will link. Yes?
Yes, absolutely. We'll make sure to link to it in the video description and you can check it out. Would definitely recommend connecting with Christy. She has a lot of amazing resources, as you can tell from this podcast episode that we're doing. She has a great presence with storytelling, and I can guarantee that your audiences will find her speeches interesting.
Thank you, Meaghan. And yes, for those looking for resources too, you can find them on my site. You can link that as well, christyrenee.com/connect. And there's a form that if you want resources from, if you're like, hey, you didn't talk enough about gut health, I need to know more about that, all the way to how to engage, retain, and advice for cold LinkedIn and email outreach. You can find that all there.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Christy. I really appreciate your time, and I learned so much about storytelling from you. I'm really excited to get to LinkedIn and try writing some posts of my own.
Good.
All right. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.